Hey man, there comes a moment in every man's life where confusion slowly melts into clarity, not because he suddenly becomes smarter, but because he finally stops taking women's actions personally. He stops trying to decode mixed signals, stops trying to make sense of contradictions, stops trying to force logic onto something that was never built on logic in the first place. And that moment, that shift, is when everything begins to feel lighter, because you're no longer trapped in the exhausting cycle of asking, why would she do this? Instead, you start seeing the patterns for what they are, not what you hoped they'd be. The fog lifts, and for the first time, you're not reacting emotionally, you're simply observing, and life gets easier the second you stop expecting women to think, respond, and love the way you do. You realize female nature isn't something complicated or sinister, it's something instinctual. Women don't operate through long-term emotional logic the way men do. They operate through the emotional truth of the moment. What she feels right now becomes her reality, even if that reality contradicts everything she said yesterday. That used to frustrate you, maybe even hurt you, because you believed consistency meant loyalty. But once you understand that emotional fluidity is simply how they move through the world, you stop being shocked when her tone shifts, when her interest dips, when her excitement fades. It's not betrayal, it's her internal weather changing. And once you stop trying to control the weather, you stop suffering in storms you didn't create. You begin to see how much of your pain came not from what she did, but from what you expected. You expected her commitment to be as solid as yours. You expected her feelings to form a straight line instead of a spiral. You expected her words to be promises rather than snapshots of temporary emotion. And when reality didn't match those expectations, it felt like disrespect. But when you understand female nature, you realize she wasn't lying when she said she loved you. She genuinely meant it in that moment. She wasn't acting when she pulled away later. She genuinely felt disconnected in that moment. Women live emotionally, not chronologically. And once you stop attaching permanence to temporary feelings, everything becomes less shocking and far less painful. You also start recognizing the subtle ways women test men, not out of cruelty, but out of instinct. A woman pushes against your boundaries, not because she wants to destroy them, but because she wants to see if you actually have any. She contradicts herself to see if you'll fold. She pulls back to see if you'll chase. She creates tension to see if you can handle pressure. When you don't understand this, it feels manipulative, but when you finally get it, it becomes clear she's not looking for control, she's looking for strength. Not strength in the loud, aggressive sense, but the quiet, grounded, unshakable kind. The kind that doesn't panic when emotions shift. The kind that doesn't fall apart when affection dips. The kind that stays the same man through every test. Suddenly, behaviors that used to break you don't touch you the same way anymore. When she goes cold for a few days, you don't spiral. When she throws a passive-aggressive comment, you don't lose your center. When she suddenly needs space, you don't beg for reassurance, because you finally understand that her emotions fluctuate like seasons, and a man's role isn't to chase summer, but to stay grounded through every temperature. Realizing this becomes a superpower. You stop reacting, you stop over-explaining, you stop trying to fix her mood, you simply hold your frame, and ironically, that's when she becomes more attracted to you than ever. And something else shifts too. You stop trying to earn her approval. You stop tying your worth to her affection. You stop believing love needs to be proven through sacrifice. Female nature responds to a man who stands firm, not a man who bends until he breaks. When you finally internalize this, women start treating you differently without you saying a word. They become more respectful, more cooperative, more feminine around you. Not because you changed what you give, but because you changed what you tolerate. You're no longer a man running after validation. You're a man who lets the world gravitate toward him. Once you understand female nature, you stop arguing with reality. You stop taking her shifting feelings as an insult. You stop demanding logical explanations from someone who experiences life through intuition, emotion, and sensation. Instead, you move in a way that protects your peace. You give space when space is needed. You detach when chaos increases. You remove your attention when it's disrespected, not as punishment, but as self-preservation. You stop fighting battles that were never yours to win, and without the constant emotional noise, your life begins to feel unbelievably calm. The biggest transformation you feel is internal. You no longer fear losing a woman because you finally understand that losing her isn't the worst thing that can happen. Losing yourself is, so you stop over-investing, you stop chasing, you stop emotionally bankrupting yourself for someone who hasn't earned that level of access to you. Instead, you start valuing your time, your energy, your standards, you become selective in a way you never were before. And the world treats selective men differently. They get more respect, more admiration, more control over their romantic lives, not because they try harder, but because they understand the game. Female nature becomes predictable in the best way. You can feel when she's pulling away without panicking. You can tell when her interest rises without over-celebrating. You can see her insecurity, her curiosity, her doubt, her attraction, all unfolding in her behavior, long before she speaks. That used to confuse you. Now it guides you. You stop treating her reactions as mysteries and start seeing them as signals, not instructions, not warnings, just signals. And once you're fluent in this language, relationships feel less like emotional landmines and more like movement, flowing, shifting, natural long. But the real peace comes from this. Once you understand female nature, you stop trying to change women and start changing the way you show up as a man. You stop judging them for being emotional creatures and start aligning your expectations with reality. You stop trying to force loyalty out of inconsistency. You stop expecting permanence from someone whose heart was trained by chaos. And because you expect less fantasy, you suffer less disappointment. Everything becomes easier, not because women change, but because your relationship to their nature changes. You finally see the truth. Understanding them isn't about controlling them, it's about mastering yourself. There comes a day when you stop internalizing her emotional swings as a reflection of your worth. You start seeing that her bad days weren't caused by you, her distance wasn't a punishment, and her sudden affection wasn't a reward. It was simply her nervous system moving through life the way it always has. And the moment you detach your identity from her moods, you stop living like a man who's waiting to be chosen. You start living like a man who already knows his value. That shift is subtle, but she feels it instantly. Women can sense the difference between a man who anchors himself and a man who anchors his life around them. And ironically, she becomes more drawn to the one who doesn't revolve around her. You also start noticing something you missed before. How women don't actually fall for the man who tries the hardest. They fall for the man who feels the safest emotionally, who doesn't collapse under pressure, who holds himself with quiet certainty even when the outcome is unknown. And once you understand female nature, you stop using effort as currency. You stop thinking you can convince her to stay with grand gestures, endless availability, or constant reassurance. You realize attraction doesn't grow from desperation or devotion. It grows from the calm confidence of a man who knows he can walk away if he needs to. And once you embody that, everything becomes easier because you no longer chase, you attract. There's a peace that settles inside you when you stop trying to decode her contradictions. You accept that she can want closeness and distance at the same time, that she can crave reassurance yet test your emotional strength, that she can desire stability while being drawn to unpredictability. These contradictions used to exhaust you because you assumed they meant she was confused. But when you understand female nature, you see it differently. She is simply driven by emotional impulses that shift based on the moment. She isn't lying when she says she wants you close. She isn't lying when she pulls away later. Both feelings are real to her. And when you stop fighting these shifts, you stop suffering through them. You start to notice how much power silence gives you, not as a tactic, but as a way of removing yourself from emotional turbulence. When she spirals, you no longer jump into the chaos trying to fix it. When she withdraws, you don't chase with anxious energy. When she tests you, you don't respond with insecurity. Your silence becomes a mirror that reflects her behavior back to her, and more importantly, it protects you from getting dragged into storms that aren't yours to weather. Understanding female nature teaches you that not every reaction deserves your energy. Some moments require stillness, not strategy, distance, not dialogue. The more you understand women, the more selective you become. You stop falling for pretty words, emotional highs, or the excitement of being desired. You start looking for patterns, consistency, emotional maturity, accountability. You pay attention to how she treats you when she's upset, not just when she's in love. You observe how she behaves when you set boundaries, not just when she's comfortable. And the moment you sense instability disguised as passion, or entitlement disguised as affection, you step back without hesitation. Not because you fear being hurt, but because you refuse to invest in someone who hasn't confronted her own emotional chaos. Something incredible happens as you elevate your standards. The type of women who once overlooked you now feel intimidated by you, and the type of women who once intimidated you now feel drawn to you. Because you're no longer seeking validation, you're seeking alignment. You're no longer trying to prove yourself, You're evaluating. You're no longer the passenger in the relationship, you're the driver. And women respond differently to a man who leads his own life. They soften around him, they respect him more, they try harder, not because he demands it, but because his energy naturally creates that dynamic. When you finally grasp female nature, you stop expecting a woman to love you the way you love her. Men love with commitment, women love with emotion, men feel loyalty through time and effort. Women feel loyalty through how you make them feel in the moment. These differences used to frustrate you, but now they liberate you. Because once you stop expecting her to operate like you, her behavior no longer feels like a betrayal. It feels like a pattern you can understand and navigate without losing yourself. And the more you lean into this understanding, the less her emotional shifts disrupt your peace. You learn something else. Women don't lose attraction because of small mistakes. They lose it when they sense weakness in your core. When they feel you relying on them for emotional grounding, when they see you bending every boundary just to keep them happy, when they sense you abandoning your purpose just to maintain their approval. Understanding female nature teaches you that attraction is emotional, not logical. She doesn't choose who she respects, she feels it. And the moment she senses that you've placed her above yourself, that feeling changes. But when you prioritize your mission, stay grounded, and refuse to compromise your identity, she can't help but feel drawn to you. What used to feel complicated now feels almost predictable. You can feel when her interest grows, when her doubts appear, when her insecurity makes her pull away, when her curiosity makes her return. And because you understand the rhythm, you stop reacting with fear. Instead, you respond with control. Instead of panicking when she becomes distant, you give her the space she needs. Instead of chasing reassurance, you let her come back on her own terms. And instead of questioning your worth, you recognize that her emotional world has nothing to do with your value as a man. Everything becomes easier, not because women suddenly change, but because you finally stop fighting their nature. You stop demanding logic from emotion. You stop expecting stability from inconsistency. You stop personalizing behaviors that were never meant to wound you, and in doing so, you become the one thing most men never achieve in relationships: unshakable. You move differently, you speak differently, you choose differently, and women treat you differently. Because once you understand female nature, you stop trying to survive their storms and start becoming the man who stands above them. There's a moment, somewhere in the quiet after heartbreak, where you finally understand why losing yourself for a woman never works. Because female nature isn't attracted to the man who gives everything, it's attracted to the man who remains himself despite everything. The one who doesn't fall apart when she pulls away. The one who doesn't crumble when she gets emotional. The one who doesn't abandon his identity to keep her close. Once you grasp this, you stop treating love like a negotiation. You stop offering loyalty as a plea, and you start moving from a place of strength instead of fear. It's not coldness, it's emotional sovereignty. And women respond to that in ways you never imagined when you were still chasing approval. You begin noticing how effortless interactions become when you stop overthinking every word, every text, every move. Instead of trying to predict how she'll feel, you focus on how you feel. Instead of molding yourself to fit her expectations, you let her see the man you already are. And that authenticity, the unpolished, grounded kind, creates a gravitational pull. Women open up more, they relax more, they lean into your presence rather than pulling away from it. Not because you cracked some hidden code, but because you stopped living like you were walking on emotional eggshells. Once you understand female nature, you also see how much damage you did to yourself by trying to be her emotional caretaker. You were constantly analyzing her tone, checking her mood, trying to prevent every possible argument, trying to keep her constantly reassured. You carried the weight of her emotional world on your shoulders without realizing she never asked for that version of you. She wanted your strength, not your self-sacrifice. She wanted your stability, not your overexertion. And when you finally put that weight down, you feel lighter and ironically more attractive, because you're no longer suffocating under the pressure of being everything for someone who never needed that from you. You start noticing how much more respect you receive when you enforce boundaries without hesitation. A woman may not admit it, but she watches closely to see if you fold the moment she pushes. She pays attention to how quickly you abandon your own standards just to keep her happy. And once she realizes you won't compromise your self-respect, not for affection, not for intimacy, not for validation, everything changes. She sees you differently. She listens differently. She behaves differently because she finally understands she's dealing with a man who values his life more than her approval. Another shift happens inside you. You stop seeing relationships as a source of emotional security. You stop expecting a woman to heal your loneliness, fix your insecurities, or provide the sense of identity you never built for yourself. You recognize that men who rely on women for stability end up being the ones most easily destroyed by them. And once you remove that dependency, you become untouchable, not because you're distant, but because you're self-contained. She can add to your life, but she can't become your life. And that difference changes everything about the dynamic. You start moving with a calm confidence that feels foreign at first, but natural later. You stop being startled when she shifts her mood. You stop questioning yourself when her interest dips for a moment. You stop panicking when she pulls back, and you stop celebrating too early when she leans in. You're steady, stable, consistent, but not clingy. She feels this steadiness like gravity. It makes her open up in ways she never did when you were over-invested. She becomes more feminine, more soft, more receptive, because you've created a space where she doesn't have to lead emotionally. You also begin to understand something deeper. A woman doesn't fall for a man because he is perfect. She falls because he feels real. Imperfections and all. She doesn't connect with the man desperately trying to impress her. She connects with the man who feels unbothered by whether she approves of him or not. The man who speaks with conviction, not hesitation. The man who doesn't reshape himself to match her expectations. You become that man, not by pretending, but by finally accepting who you are without apology. And that authenticity becomes more attractive than any script, strategy, or game you tried in the past. When you understand female nature, you stop giving women the power to emotionally devastate you. Not because you close your heart, but because you stop outsourcing your emotional stability. You stop believing she holds the key to your happiness. You stop believing her leaving would destroy your future. You stop believing you must keep her interested at all costs. Instead, you recognize that your life continues with or without her, and that truth frees you. It frees you from fear, it frees you from attachment, and it frees you from the desperation that used to poison every good connection you had. You start choosing women differently too. You no longer fall for the ones who create emotional intensity but offer no emotional consistency. You no longer mistake attention for affection or chemistry for compatibility. You start valuing women who bring peace instead of noise, women who communicate instead of manipulate, women who respect your boundaries instead of pushing them just to see you sweat. You become a man who isn't blinded by beauty or distracted by excitement. You look deeper, not because you're jaded, but because you're finally awake. And the most liberating part of all this, life becomes simpler. Not because women become predictable, but because you become steady. You stop collapsing under pressure. You stop chasing clarity from someone who changes her mind by the hour. You stop giving energy to situations that drain you. You stop bleeding for people who wouldn't bandage you back. You move with a quiet certainty, and the world responds. Women treat you differently. Men respect you more. Opportunities open. And relationships, whether they last or not, no longer break you, because you finally understand the one truth every man must learn. Once you understand female nature, the world stops confusing you and starts revealing itself. There comes a point where you no longer feel anger toward women for behaving the way they naturally do. The frustration dissolves because the confusion dissolves. What once felt like mixed signals, dishonesty, inconsistency, or emotional chaos now feels like instinctual behavior from someone wired differently than you. And instead of trying to fix it, fight it, or argue with it, you adjust. You stop expecting emotional permanence from someone built to feel and respond in the moment. And that acceptance removes a weight from your chest that you didn't even realize was there, because the hardest battles in a man's life aren't fought with women. They're fought with the expectations he never questioned. When you really understand female nature, you stop viewing detachment as cold. You start seeing it as emotional freedom. You stop giving women the power to validate you, define you, or complete you. You stop believing your happiness is tied to whether she stays or leaves. And in that moment, relationships shift from a desperate need to a voluntary choice. You're no longer trying to hold on to a woman like she's the missing piece of your identity. You approach everything calmly because you know you'll remain whole regardless of how the story unfolds. That quiet confidence is what makes women gravitate toward you. Not because you're indifferent, but because you're not dependent. The more you understand women, the easier it becomes to recognize when a connection is dying. You no longer cling to the past version of her, hoping she returns to the sweet, affectionate woman she was in the beginning. You stop trying to revive something that only existed because novelty made everything feel magical. When interest fades, you accept it. When effort drops, you pull back. When energy shifts, you don't chase, you simply observe. And instead of crumbling under uncertainty, you move forward with dignity. Because you've learned that real strength isn't holding onto a woman, it's knowing when she's already gone. One of the biggest changes that happens inside you is this: you stop seeking emotional peace from relationships and start seeking emotional peace within yourself. You begin prioritizing your work, your habits, your body, your purpose, your solitude. And ironically, the more you invest in yourself, the less reactive you become in relationships. Things that used to throw you into overthinking, a delayed text, a cold tone, a shift in energy, barely register anymore. Not because you don't care, but because you know your value doesn't shrink when someone momentarily stops seeing it. You also start recognizing how differently women respond to men who aren't emotionally chaotic. You notice how conversations become smoother, how arguments become shorter, how tension dissolves faster when you remain grounded instead of escalating. You realize she respects the man who doesn't panic when emotions rise. She feels safer around the man who doesn't react impulsively. She becomes calmer around the man who doesn't mirror her anxiety. Your steadiness becomes a stabilizing force, something she didn't know she needed until she experienced it. And it all becomes so much easier, not because she changed, but because you stopped getting pulled into emotional whirlwinds that were never yours to manage. You begin to see that women rarely leave because of a single mistake. They leave because the emotional rhythm broke. They leave when they stop feeling what they once felt. Not because of something you did, but because their internal compass shifted. In your younger years, this felt like a personal attack, like betrayal. But now, with clarity, you see it differently. You understand that feelings are the guide they follow. Not logic, not vows, not past investments. And instead of clinging to guilt, you accept the truth. Her departure is not always a result of your shortcomings. Sometimes, it's simply her returning to her emotional center. Once you grasp all this, you no longer waste time trying to convince a woman of your worth. You stop negotiating for affection. You stop trying to explain why she should stay. You stop defending yourself against emotions she hasn't processed within her own mind. You recognize that real desire doesn't need persuasion. Real connection doesn't require begging. Real attraction doesn't need maintenance through anxiety. So instead of arguing, you walk away when respect fades. Instead of pleading, you let distance do its work. And instead of collapsing in heartbreak, you remain steady, knowing that the right woman will choose you without needing to be convinced. When you understand female nature, you become more patient with yourself. You stop blaming yourself for past heartbreaks, past mistakes, past desperation. You stop looking at your younger self with shame and start looking at him with compassion, because now you know you weren't weak, you were uninformed, you weren't too emotional, you were inexperienced, you weren't clingy. You were trying to love a woman using your own masculine framework, not knowing she was operating on a completely different emotional wavelength. That forgiveness toward yourself is one of the most powerful transformations a man can experience. And gradually, something unexpected happens. You stop fearing relationships altogether, not because you think all women are the same, but because you finally understand the rules of the emotional landscape you're walking into. You know what to give, what to withhold, what to ignore, what to enforce, when to lead, when to step back, and when to walk away. There's no panic, no confusion, no emotional dependency. You enter relationships with your eyes open, rather than your heart exposed. And that shift alone prevents 90% of the suffering you once carried. In the end, everything gets easier because you stop trying to fit love into the shape you imagined. You stop demanding predictability from the unpredictable. You stop seeing women as puzzles to solve, and start seeing them as emotional beings with rhythms unique to their nature. And instead of resisting that nature, you work with it, calmly, confidently, without fear. You become a man who chooses when to give, when to pull back, and when to walk away, all without losing himself in the process. And that's when life begins to feel less like a struggle, and more like a path you were finally meant to walk. As you grow into this new understanding, you start seeing how much of your past pain came from expecting women to love you the way you love, with stability, loyalty, and long-term vision. But women feel love in waves, not straight lines. Their emotions shift with environment, with energy, with the story unfolding in their mind. Once you understand that, you stop taking those shifts as personal attacks. Instead of panicking when she changes tone, you observe it. Instead of reacting to her mood swings, you let them pass. Instead of trying to fix everything, you give things space. That neutrality, that ability to stay grounded while her emotions fluctuate, is what transforms you into the type of man women trust deeply but fear losing even more. You also begin understanding the silent pressure women live under, from society, from their peers, from social media, from their own insecurities. Every woman carries her own internal storm, and often her reactions toward you are not about you at all. Once you grasp this, the need to take everything to heart disappears. Her cold text doesn't ruin your day, her impatience doesn't shatter your self-worth, her confusion doesn't make you question your masculinity, because you finally understand that her emotions are not your responsibility. Your responsibility is how you show up. And when you master your own emotional world, you stop being dragged into hers. The more you observe, the more you realize women tend to mirror the emotional tone you bring into the relationship. If you're anxious, she becomes uncertain. If you're needy, she feels pressured. If you're insecure, she disconnects. But if you're calm, grounded, purposeful, she softens. She becomes feminine. She feels safe. When you understand this, you stop trying to force affection and instead focus on strengthening your internal state. You become the emotional thermostat instead of the thermometer. And with that shift, you create an environment where she naturally wants to lean in, because your energy gives her something she can't generate alone: stability. You begin to see that men destroy themselves when they try to fix a woman's emotional world. You can't save her from her own insecurities. You can't heal childhood wounds. She won't confront herself. You can't fill voids. She refuses to acknowledge. Understanding female nature teaches you that your job isn't to rescue her. Your job is to remain steady while she learns to rescue herself. You're the lighthouse, not the lifeboat. You don't jump into the storm when she panics. You hold position so she can find her way back. And that shift prevents you from drowning in emotional seas you were never meant to swim. There's a moment where you stop expecting long-term certainty from women and start valuing short-term consistency instead. You stop asking, will she stay forever? And start asking, is she showing up today with honesty and alignment? And that perspective changes everything. It removes the pressure of trying to lock someone down emotionally and replaces it with curiosity about who she is right now. You start meeting her where she is, not where you dreamed she'd be. And because you're no longer gripping the relationship so tightly, she feels freer and more drawn to you. Because a man who doesn't suffocate her with expectations makes her feel something rare: emotional freedom inside connection. Eventually, you stop seeking a woman who never changes and start looking for a woman who changes responsibly, someone who communicates instead of exploding, pauses instead of punishing, returns instead of running, reflects instead of projecting. You realize female nature isn't the enemy. Immaturity is. Emotional instability is. Unhealed wounds are. And once you recognize the difference, you stop generalizing women and start choosing better ones. You stop feeding your energy to women who weaponize their emotions and start investing in women who grow from their emotional experiences. That shift alone changes your entire dating life. You also start removing yourself from dynamics that once trapped you. A woman pulling back no longer triggers fear in you, it triggers clarity. A woman testing you no longer confuses you, it reveals where she stands. A woman withdrawing affection no longer sends you spiraling, it tells you the connection is weakening. Understanding female nature makes you decisive, not emotional. You no longer sit around dissecting what she meant. You don't beg for explanations. You don't chase closure. You simply respond with actions that protect your dignity. And that ability to walk away from anything misaligned becomes one of the strongest qualities you develop. You learn that women admire men who are emotionally available without being emotionally dependent. A man who can listen without collapsing. A man who can feel without losing direction. A man who can love without sacrificing self-respect. Once you understand this, you stop treating emotional control as coldness. You recognize it as leadership. You're not shutting down, you're staying centered. And because you operate from this grounded state, your connections become healthier, your arguments become shorter, and your breakups become less destructive. You no longer fall apart over someone else's fluctuation. You remain whole. With time, you begin seeing female nature as something you can navigate instead of something you fear. You recognize that women aren't unpredictable, they're just driven by emotions that respond to the environment you create. You understand that her attraction grows, not from what you give, but from how you carry yourself. You realize that her loyalty is tied to how safe, excited, and emotionally anchored she feels around you. And because you finally understand these dynamics, relationships feel less like chaos and more like dance, one where you're no longer stumbling but leading. And ultimately, everything gets easier, not because women become simpler, but because you finally grow into the man who can handle the complexity without losing himself. You move through the world with a sense of peace you never had before. You choose wisely, you give selectively, you detach quickly from anything unstable. You expect emotional shifts, but no longer internalize them. You love without worshipping, you walk away without breaking, and you stand in your life with a strength that women feel immediately. Understanding female nature doesn't make you cynical, it makes you calm, it makes you confident, it makes you whole, and from that place, everything becomes easier.